Her dog destroyed my garden for weeks and she stood there laughing about it. So I did something quieter. I didn't fight her. I let the mud do it. And after that, she never laughed again. If you've ever had someone dismiss your frustration like it didn't matter, like you were overreacting, then this story is for you. Hit subscribe, tap like, and drop a comment if you've ever experienced that sweet, silent kind of justice. Because sometimes revenge doesn't bark, it squelches. Let's get into it. I take care of my plants the way some people take care of pets. Not casually, not as decoration. Intentionally, every leaf mattered. Every stem was placed exactly where I wanted it. I'm not someone who spends thousands on landscaping, but what I built in that small patch beside my house took time. Patience, early mornings, soil under my fingernails. It started as bare ground. Then came the marigolds, the hibiscus, a small row of herbs that smelled incredible when brushed by your hand. I even installed a basic edging line so the garden had structure. It wasn't extravagant, but it was mine, and that mattered. She moved in about 6 months after I finished the garden. Mid-40s maybe. Confident, loud on the phone. The kind of person whose voice carries over fences. And she had a dog. Big, heavy, one of those powerful breeds with thick paws and zero spatial awareness. At first, I didn't mind. Dogs are fine. Dogs exist. But every morning, around 6:30 right when I'd water my plants, she'd open her back door and let the dog roam. Not into a designated yard area. Not on a leash. Loose, and somehow always near my side of the fence. The first time I noticed soil displaced, I assumed it was strays. Nigeria has street dogs. Kids sometimes throw stones. Cats roam, so I fixed it. Repacked the soil. Repositioned the flowers. Told myself it was random. Then it happened again. This time, a small cluster of marigolds were completely uprooted, roots exposed, leaves torn. I felt that tightening in my chest. Not rage, more like disbelief. I crouched there longer than necessary. Fingers hovering over damaged petals like maybe I could reverse it. It's strange how something small can feel personal. But this did. I fixed it again. Still no assumptions. It was a Tuesday. The air was humid already even though the sun had barely risen. I heard scratching. That distinct, rapid pawing sound. I leaned slightly around the edge of my house, not dramatically, just enough to see the source. There he was, her dog, digging enthusiastically near the fence line, my fence line, and she, standing 3 feet behind it, on the phone, laughing about something else entirely. Not watching, not correcting, not even looking concerned. She saw me, our eyes met. She didn't apologize, she didn't move, she just kept talking, and the dog kept digging. That's when something shifted, because it wasn't the dog anymore. It was the choice. Later that day, I walked over, knocked calmly. She opened the door with that casual energy like nothing had happened. Yes. Hey, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Your dog's been digging near my plants. Could you maybe keep him away from the fence? She shrugged. Actually shrugged. Dogs do these things, she said, with a half laugh. Like I just complained about wind, there was something about that laugh. It wasn't cruel. It was dismissive. And dismissal, that quiet message of this isn't important enough for me to care, hits deeper than open hostility. I stood there for half a second longer than comfortable. Okay, I said, and I left. It didn't stop. In fact, now that I knew what to look for, I noticed the routine. Every morning, door opens, dog charges out. First stop, my fence. Not because there was anything inherently exciting. Not bones, not scent, but because it had soft soil. Moist soil, fresh soil. The kind of soil someone maintains carefully. That attracts digging. After 3 days, I installed a small secondary border fence inside my yard, nothing aggressive, just enough to discourage. He jumped it, or leaned and crushed it. I found herbs flattened. Stems snapped. Soil kicked against the fence boards like shrapnel, and each time she stood there scrolling or talking, never intervening. Once, she even smiled when he came back dirty like it was cute. Something about that smile sealed it for me. It's funny how small conflicts start to live in your head. I began waking up already annoyed. I'd peek outside before stepping into my yard, checking if she was there. I started anticipating damage. And anticipation is a strange kind of stress. It's like bracing for impact every morning. You replay conversations in your head. Maybe I should say something firmer. Maybe I should escalate. Maybe I should install cameras. But here's the thing. I didn't want drama. I wanted peace. And I wanted my garden intact. Calling authorities over dirt, it felt excessive. Arguing daily, exhausting. But doing nothing, that felt weak. and I hate feeling weak in my own space. Then one morning, while watering, I noticed something simple. The ground was soft, exceptionally soft, because I water deeply. And when I do, the soil near the fence holds moisture longer due to shade. Meaning if something heavy ran across it, it wouldn't just disturb soil, it would sink. That thought didn't come with fireworks. It came quietly. Logically, not destructive, not harmful, just physics. Mud behaves predictably. And I realized I didn't have to confront her again. I didn't need to argue responsibility. I didn't need to shout about respect. I could simply maintain my garden. Very well, very thoroughly, very moistly. And that's when the plan, if you can even call it that, began forming. Not revenge in the explosive sense. No yelling, no sabotage, just water. Extra water. Every morning. Strategically. And I said nothing. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. There's something strangely empowering about waking up before a problem does. The air was cool. Quiet. Even the birds hadn't started their chaotic morning orchestra yet. I stepped outside barefoot, hose in hand, and stood in my garden like a general surveying a battlefield. Only this battle wasn't loud. It was about moisture levels. I watered thoroughly, not recklessly, that would damage the roots. I cared about my plants too much for that, but I let the hose linger near the fence line. I saturated the soil where his paws usually landed. The ground darkened, softened, glistened just slightly under the rising sun. Then I went back inside and waited. 6:30 a.m. Door creaked open. Heavy paws hit concrete. The familiar gallop. I didn't look immediately. I listened. Sniffing. Scratching. Then the digging, fast, aggressive, confident. And then a shift in sound. Not digging, not claws on wood. A wet suction noise. And then thud. Followed by the most indignant, shocked yelp I've ever heard from an animal. I peeked through the window. He had slipped, not fallen violently. Not injured. But his front paws sank into the mud, his back legs skidded forward, and momentum did the rest. His entire lower half collapsed sideways into the soaked soil. Dark brown splashed everywhere. On his fur, on her pants, on the lower part of her phone case. Time slowed for a split second. She froze, looked down, looked at him, looked at her shoes slowly disappearing under splatter. There was no laugh this time, just silence. Then a very sharp, very irritated, "Oh my God." She tugged on his collar, trying to lift him, but mud doesn't release easily. It clings, it makes everything awkward, and every movement just created more mess. He shook. That full-body wet dog shake. Mud sprayed in a perfect radius. I stepped back from the window. I didn't want her to see me smiling. I waited a full 2 minutes before stepping outside casually, watering can in hand like I had been tending to things all along. She was struggling. The dog's white fur was now mostly brown. Her once neutral sandals? Ruined. The walkway between our houses looked like a crime scene made entirely of dirt. She avoided eye contact, but I offered it anyway. "Morning." Flat tone, neutral face. She didn't respond, just dragged the dog back inside. The door shut harder than usual, and I stood there. Still, listening, water dripping from the leaves, distant scraping sounds from inside her house. The muffled frustration of someone who had just been mildly humbled. My plants stood undamaged. For the first time in weeks. I exhaled fully. You'd think that would be enough. It wasn't. 2 days passed peacefully. Then 6:30 a.m. Door opens, pause, the dog hesitates slightly this time. Interesting, but he runs anyway. Habit overrides memory. This time the ground wasn't just soft, it was deceptive. Top layer slightly firm. Underneath, saturated. He made it 2 steps. Before both front paws plunged down like stepping into pudding. His back end followed. And he didn't just slip this time, he slid. A full, humiliating, sideways glide across damp soil before collapsing again. This one was louder. There's a particular splat sound mud makes when it embraces something heavy. It's not aggressive. It's patient. And it won again. She shouted this time, not at me, at the dog, like it was his fault gravity exists. "Why are you always there?" That sentence almost made me laugh out loud. Always there? He was there because she let him there. Because boundaries exist only if someone enforces them. I didn't look out immediately. I heard the chaos first, the leash clinking, her struggling to avoid stepping forward and sinking herself, her irritated sighs turning into low curses. Then the shake again. More mud spray, more cleaning in her immediate future. And again, I stepped outside only after the dramatic moment peaked. Same neutral expression, same watering can. Our eyes met briefly. Something had changed. Her face didn't have that playful dismissal anymore. It had calculation. Here's what people don't realize about repeated embarrassment. The first time, you blame the situation. The second time, you start questioning your decisions. By the third time, you adjust behavior. That's human nature. We tolerate inconvenience. We avoid humiliation, especially visible humiliation. And Mud doesn't argue. Mud doesn't insult. Mud simply responds to weight and poor choices. The third incident happened 4 days later, and it wasn't dramatic, because she intervened quickly. The dog ran toward the fence. She shouted immediately, "No. Stay here," he hesitated, still pulled forward. But she grabbed his collar before he fully crossed into the soft soil zone. He tried to dig. She yanked him back, her voice sharper now, no laughter, no phone in hand, full attention. And that's when I knew it worked. For a full week after that, the dog never came near my side. She kept him closer, sometimes even leashed, sometimes walking him further down the street instead. My plants stopped disappearing. No more uprooted marigolds, no crushed herbs, no soil kicked against the fence. Instead, my garden started thriving again, and I found something interesting within myself. It wasn't joy exactly. It wasn't revenge ecstasy. It was calm, a return of ownership. My mornings were quiet again, predictable again, safe again, and that safety felt earned. There were no shouting matches, no official complaints, no nasty neighbor wars, just water, just gravity, just consequences delivered by physics. About 2 weeks later, I ran into her in front of the houses. She was walking the dog on a leash this time, controlled, disciplined. She looked at my yard briefly, at the lush flowers, the untouched fence line, then at me. There was no apology, but there was no laugh either, just a short nod. And something in her eyes that finally acknowledged what she had refused to before: respect. Not fear, not hostility, respect. Because boundaries don't always need shouting. Sometimes they need reinforcement. Solid, physical, undeniable reinforcement. And people learn this wasn't about a dog. It wasn't even about plants. It was about dismissal. That small, subtle way people minimize your space. Dogs do these things. That sentence is bigger than it sounds. It's code for your inconvenience doesn't outweigh my comfort. Your frustration isn't worth my effort. And that's what bothered me. Not the dirt, the disregard, so I didn't escalate emotionally. I escalated strategically. And the result wasn't destructive. Her dog wasn't harmed. Her property wasn't damaged beyond washable mess. But the inconvenience, the repeated cleaning, the minor humiliation of muddy chaos, that was proportionate. That was educational, and most importantly, it stopped the behavior. My garden is thriving now, even added a few new plants. Stronger border, better soil mix. But here's the real win: I don't feel tense in my own yard anymore. I don't brace for impact at 6:30. I don't rehearse arguments in my head. Peace returned. And peace is often the most satisfying revenge of all. If you've ever dealt with a neighbor who thought your space didn't matter, drop a comment and tell me how you handled it. Would you have confronted her harder or done what I did? If you love stories where justice is subtle but satisfying, make sure you like and subscribe. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's muddy, and sometimes that's enough.
If you like stories where people finally get what they deserve, click the playlist on screen and binge the rest.